Hello everybody, this is Women Wonder here today, and I am working on the final part number 3 of the 25 Expressions Challenge featuring my original character of a mother. If you want to check out part 1 and 2 of the challenge, I would recommend that because I do the first 8 expressions in the first part of the series, plus I do the next 8 of them in the part 2, and in this one I'm working on the final 9 plus an extra bonus one at the end of me redoing one I wasn't really quite happy with after doing it earlier in the series. So I definitely recommend checking that out if you want to see the process of me creating some of the ones you might glimpse above throughout the video, and getting to see and hear about some of the other parts of the process of this challenge. Now today I thought I would talk a little bit about some of what I've taken away from this challenge now that it is finally done. It did take a little while to finish, and I know this video is a little late, but it was taking me a little longer than I had hoped to do the last of these expressions, especially because it did get more difficult figuring out how to do them as the challenge went on, since the expressions were getting more and more specific. Even though they might be based off of simple expressions technically that were done earlier, they were getting more specific where I had to really figure out how exactly I was going to make it coherent as to what expression I was portraying. Now I talked before about how I was going about showing this character's emotions through her body language and the way I was drawing her head to sort of in the way of eyebrows or eyes are, and emotions, the way they slant. Plus, some other little details, like I mentioned the wire on the side of her head, the way that interacts and everything through her expression, stuff like that. And I think now that I'm at the end of it, I think what ended up making this challenge a little more easier, even though it did get harder as I went along, but just easier in general, was that I did kind of pretty much set ground rules as to what I was doing, how, the rules of how I was using her head shape and her body language to show her expressions, instead of sort of not really having any rules and then it got inconsistent. Especially because it was important to be consistent, since I wanted this character to basically look the same throughout the proportion and the details and stuff like that throughout each emotion, but also making that emotion coherent as its own emotion, instead of, say, when I get to despondent / pouty, unless I already did it, I don't remember, but when I do that one, yeah, I guess I did, but when I do that one, technically, despondent or pouty is kind of similar to sad, but it's not really quite the same, obviously, so I had to figure out how to show where it's sort of like sad, but it's specifically despondent / pouty, where it doesn't look the same as sad, which I had done much earlier in part 1 of the series, because that was one of the first expressions in the challenge. So that was a bit of a challenge, but like I said, I think pretty much setting the rules as to how I was drawing her, what the details were, and how I was going to show her emotions really helped, I think, make the challenge successful pretty early on, and help set the groundwork for the whole challenge, which I'm very glad that I finally got to finish. And by the way, I would recommend this challenge to anyone who has a character that they're going to be drawing quite a few times, because it not only helps with the expressions, but it also helps with really just the overall details and design of the character, because it helps you focus on those little details that maybe you didn't think about before, that could be easily forgettable just drawing the character as you go. You might simplify, which simplifying isn't too bad, because especially it's understandable if you are doing something like animation or a comic, but you also want to establish that you're going to be simplifying it much sooner than getting halfway through the thing and then suddenly the earlier drawings of the character are much more detailed and then the later ones are simpler, and then it gets inconsistent. So I definitely recommend doing something like this, or any other challenge where it involves drawing the same character multiple times, because I definitely have a better idea after doing this of this character, Oven Mother, and what I want her to look like and how she will interact with her world and the other characters, especially because, and especially important, because I would like to make a comic based on her and her world at some point. So knowing that kind of stuff is very important when you have a character that's going to be going for different emotions and different scenes and situations where they might interact with people differently. Which is also interesting, which I mentioned this, I think, in one of the earlier videos of this challenge, was that doing some of these emotions, which I really had never even imagined of my mother having, just because, you know, she sort of had a more specific personality, and I guess, you know, things like being angry, like obviously she would get angry because she is supposed to be, you know, pretty much like a person in terms of her emotions and everything, but just thinking of her angry, I guess, didn't really fit her personality. So going through and actually doing the different expressions like angry and even rage, which I get to a little later, helped me kind of realize maybe what kind of situations would actually make her feel those things, which I think will be pretty interesting if I ever get to the comic, just to be able to show more sides of her and show how far she might go in her emotions depending on certain things going on. And honestly, I think I have that problem quite a lot with the characters that I create, having them where they pretty much, you know, I kind of know their personality, but, you know, say like if they're more of a moody character, and I kind of have the problem where sometimes I fall into the trap where that's all I can really imagine them being. So, you know, sometimes it might be slightly more difficult to imagine like what they would look like if they were happy, or if they were, you know, feel, you know, more like, you know, like really touched by something or something like that, you know, where they actually feel more maybe happy emotions, because that's not really their personality. So I think going and, you know, trying to do different expressions that maybe you didn't expect your characters to feel, even though obviously, you know, as humans or people who, you know, creatures that are more humanoid, obviously we feel lots of different emotions, but sometimes when you have a character, like say with this character where, you know, I imagined her as a more docile, non-confrontational kind of person, you know, you might, it's easy to, you know, think, well, you know, she's not really going to get angry at too much stuff. But, you know, there are things, you know, that might happen that she would get angry with. And really, if you have a story, you really do want to show the different emotions and different things that really, you know, bring the character, show more sides of them and make them seem much more depthful. Like there's things that do make them angry. And that, you know, it also creates drama, of course, you know, having a character that has that kind of emotion. So I will mention that right now I am working on rage, which is one of the last expressions I'm going to be working on in this video. And I was actually really, really happy with how this came out. I really liked the idea of having, doing an expression where her the door part of the toaster oven for, that's her head. I really like the idea of actually having it open, and, you know, having like the flames and the smoke coming out. I thought that was really cool looking, and it really definitely, because it definitely sets it apart from just angry, because angry was more almost like, you know, she was trying to, like from part 1 of the series, it almost seemed like she was trying to hold back the anger, you know, because like I said, she's a little more, you know, not so much confrontational. But then with rage, it really, you know, she's pretty much out of control angry because, you know, something that's making her like that. But finally, this is the last expression I'm working on in this video. This is, I'm redoing silly, because I was never really quite happy with how that came out. But I think it came out a little better. I guess it was kind of hard to imagine her as silly just because of her character and everything, but I think it turned out better the second time. But anyway, I'm going through the expressions now, the whole from the beginning, even though, like I said, I think it would be nice if you haven't seen part 1 or part 2 to go check it out, just because it's interesting to go back and see the process and everything of, and like the thought process behind it. But anyway, this is going to be the end of the video. I really hope you enjoyed this series. I certainly did, even though it was very challenging, but I guess that's why they call it a challenge. And I'd really like to do more challenges in the future, but right now I have some other like projects and stuff that I'm going to be working on, and hopefully getting a video out once a week, since I did miss last week. But anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. And if you want to check out my social media sites, you can at Facebook, DeviantArt, Redbubble, and stuff like that. And like, subscribe, and comment. And thank you for watching. Bye!